Welcome back to A Veil of Crime. In the hills of West Virginia, history tends to stay put. Old bridges, old churches, and sometimes old bodies. In the town of Philippi, there is a small local museum that for years has kept two human bodies on display. Not wax, not props, real women, mummified in 1888 by a local man who wanted to prove that he had found the secret of the pharaohs. Locals, tourists, even school kids saw them. What almost no one talked about was where those bodies came from and why it was so easy to get them. Back in the late 1800s, the state hospital at Weston, then called the West Virginia Hospital for the Insane, was overcrowded, underfunded, and full of people who that today might never have been institutionalized. It later became famous as the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum. Patients died there. Some had no families. Unclaimed bodies were often sold or given to medical schools, and that was legal at the time. That's how the Philippi mummies came to exist. In 1888, farmer and experimenter Graham Hamrick bought two female cadavers from the asylum for about $140. He had been testing preservation methods on animals and plants. His dream? To discover a new embalming process. The two women, unnamed patients, became his test subjects. Hamrick used a chemical solution of his own invention. He injected and soaked the bodies, claiming his method preserved them perfectly. In 1892, he even applied for a U.S. patent for his technique. The resulting mummies were shockingly lifelike, and he kept them on display in his barn. No one knows their names. Records list them only as female patients from the asylum, unclaimed after death. They became scientific subjects without consent, their stories erased by time and curiosity. After Hamrick's death, the mummies eventually ended up in the Barbour County Historical Museum in Philippi. For decades, they've been displayed behind glass as the mummies of the insane. Visitors marvel, and hopefully a few consider the ethics. Though legal at the time, Hamrick's work raises modern questions of consent and human dignity. Mental patients of the 1800s were among the most vulnerable, and these women, in death, became curiosities instead of remembered individuals. Now, I don't usually break character or make it personal, but I've seen the Philippi mummies twice, the first time being over 20 years ago. Their story has stayed with me ever since. Standing before them, I felt the weight of forgotten lives preserved without consent and the uneasy silence of history watching back. That moment is why I wanted to write this episode, to give them some of the humanity that they were denied. So tonight we met two women whose names we don't know, but whose bodies refused to disappear. They were bought from a mental hospital, turned into proof of a chemical formula, and then displayed like oddities. If anything deserves a veil, it's them. If you visit Philippi today, you can still learn about them. But remember, behind every strange roadside museum piece, there's usually a real person who didn't get to choose. If you're fascinated by stories where history and crime intertwine, subscribe to A Veil of Crime. New episodes every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday at 6 p.m., where forgotten voices finally get to speak again.